The first time Matilda noticed the scratch marks on David's arm, he was standing at the kitchen sink, washing blood off his hands. "Gardening," he said, before she could ask. She nodded, smiled, watched the water run pink down the drain. That was 3 days ago. Their house sat at the end of Maple Drive, where the streetlights stopped working 2 months prior. The city kept promising to fix them. They never did. So now, every night, their cul-de-sac disappeared into a darkness so complete that Matilda could stand at their bedroom window and see nothing but her own reflection staring back. David said he liked it, the quiet, the privacy. Matilda said nothing. She'd been saying nothing for 6 months now, ever since they moved here, to this neighborhood where everyone smiled too wide and nobody ever seemed to leave their houses after dark, where Mrs. Parker next door watched from behind lace curtains, her silhouette frozen in the same position every evening at 7 p.m., where the Mitchells' teenage son stopped going to school in October and nobody talked about it, where her husband had started taking long walks at night without her. The house itself seemed to encourage secrets. It was a colonial revival with good bones, the realtor had said. Original hardwood floors, a finished basement, a 2-car garage that David had claimed immediately, filling it with tools Matilda had never seen him use. In their old apartment, they'd been close, inseparable even. They'd fallen asleep on the couch together, limbs tangled, watching bad movies. They'd cooked breakfast at midnight and made love in the kitchen while eggs burned on the stove. But this house had too many rooms, too many doors that closed, too many spaces where a person could disappear. Matilda found herself tracking David's movements through the sounds he made, the creak of the basement stairs, the slam of the garage door, the running water in the bathroom at odd hours. She'd started cataloging these sounds, building a map of his habits. She told herself it was normal, that all couples went through adjustments after a move. But late at night, when sleep wouldn't come, she'd wonder, when had she stopped trusting him? Or worse, when had he given her reason to? The second time Matilda noticed something wrong, she was folding laundry in the bedroom. David's shirt, the blue one he'd worn Thursday night, had a small tear near the collar, and something dark crusted along the seam. Mud, maybe, or something else. She held it up to the light, studied the fabric. Her hands weren't shaking. That's what scared her most, how steady her hands had become lately, how calm she felt while examining evidence of something she didn't want to name. From downstairs, David's voice, "Matilda, you coming down?" She folded the shirt, placed it in the drawer. "In a minute," she called back. Her voice sounded normal, pleasant even. She was getting good at that. Matilda descended the stairs slowly, one hand trailing along the wallpaper, a pattern of vines that looked like they were choking something. David had wanted to repaper immediately. She'd insisted they leave it. Now she couldn't remember why. David was in the living room, laptop open, the blue light washing his face in an eerie glow. He looked up when she entered, and for just a moment she didn't recognize him. The angles of his face seemed wrong, foreign. Then he smiled, and he was David again. "Come look at this," he said, patting the couch beside him. She sat, not too close. On the screen was a news article, local section. "Another break-in on Sycamore," he said. "3rd Street over." "That's 2 streets over." "I know." His expression was serious, concerned. "Maybe we should get a security system, cameras." Matilda studied his profile. "Do you think we need cameras?" "Better safe than sorry." But something in his tone felt off, rehearsed almost, like he'd been practicing this conversation. "Maybe," she said. That night, David installed motion sensor lights around the perimeter of the house.
Matilda watched from the kitchen window as he worked, his figure moving in and out of shadow. The lights came on whenever he passed, illuminating him in harsh white bursts. She thought about how easy it would be to see someone coming, or to see them leaving. The detective came on a Tuesday. Matilda answered the door to find a woman in a gray coat, badge already out, expression carefully neutral. "Mrs. Palmer? I'm looking for a missing person case, a woman named Jennifer Hartley. She was last seen in this neighborhood 4 days ago." Matilda's heart didn't race, her palms didn't sweat. Instead, she felt that same terrible calm washing over her. "I'm sorry," Matilda said. "I don't know that name." "She was jogging," Detective Reeves continued, watching Matilda's face, "Thursday evening, around 8 p.m., along this street." Thursday evening, the night David came home with scratches on his arm. "I'm afraid I didn't see anything," Matilda said. "My husband and I were inside all evening." The lie came so easy as breathing. Detective Reeves nodded slowly, handed Matilda a card. "If you remember anything at all." Matilda took the card, smiled, and as she closed the door, she caught a glimpse of Mrs. Parker's curtains shifting, always watching, always silent. Matilda stood with her back against the door for a long moment, listening to her own breathing. The house was quiet, too quiet. David was at work. She was alone. But she didn't feel alone. She felt observed, studied, like a specimen under glass. She walked to the kitchen, filled a glass of water, drank it slowly. Her hands were steady. That bothered her. Shouldn't she be more upset, more frightened? A woman is missing, possibly dead, and Matilda felt nothing but a creeping sense of inevitability. She looked down at Detective Reeves' card, turned it over in her fingers. There was a phone number, an email address, an invitation to tell the truth. But what truth? That her husband might be a killer? That she'd been collecting evidence against him for weeks? That part of her, a dark, secret part, had been waiting for something like this to happen. Matilda placed the card in her wallet, behind her driver's license, where she'd see it every time she looked. A reminder, or a promise. That afternoon, Matilda did something she'd been putting off for weeks. She went next door to introduce herself to Mrs. Parker. They'd been neighbors for 6 months, but had never exchanged more than a wave. Mrs. Parker was elderly, 70, maybe older, and lived alone. Her house was immaculate from the outside, perfect hedges, perfect lawn, perfect white trim that somehow never seemed to need painting. Matilda knocked on the door, waited. No answer. She knocked again, harder this time. From inside, a sound, shuffling footsteps. Then the door opened a crack, chain still attached. Mrs. Parker's face appeared in the gap, pale, drawn. Her eyes were a watery blue, but sharp, so sharp. "Yes?" "Mrs. Parker, I'm Matilda Palmer from next door. I just wanted to introduce myself properly. I brought cookies." She held up a plate, covered in plastic wrap, a peace offering. Mrs. Parker's eyes moved from Matilda's face to the cookies and back again. "I don't eat sugar." "Oh, well, maybe you should go inside." Mrs. Parker's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "Before dark. It's not safe out here after dark." Matilda felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you mean?" But Mrs. Parker was already closing the door. The lock clicked, the chain rattled, and Matilda was left standing on the porch, holding cookies no one wanted, wondering what the old woman knew. That night, Matilda couldn't sleep. She lay in bed beside David, listening to him breathe, steady, peaceful, the breathing of someone with nothing to hide. But she kept thinking about Jennifer Hartley, about Thursday evening, about the way David had looked at her over dinner that night, his eyes slightly unfocused, as if he was somewhere else entirely, remembering something or hiding something, and about Mrs. Parker's warning, "Not safe after dark." "Are you awake?" she whispered. No response. She turned toward him in the darkness, could barely make out his features. The familiar shape of his face had become something foreign, something unknowable. Who was this man she'd married, and why had she started noticing the smell of bleach in the garage 3 weeks ago? Matilda slipped out of bed, careful not to wake him. She moved to the window and looked out at the cul-de-sac. The darkness was absolute. The broken streetlights created pools of shadow where anything could hide. As she watched, a figure emerged from one of those shadows, a person, walking slowly down the middle of the street. Matilda's breath caught. She pressed closer to the window, trying to see more clearly. The figure stopped, directly in front of their house, and looked up. Matilda stumbled backward, heart hammering. In that brief moment before she'd moved, she could have sworn the figure waved. When she forced herself to look again, the street was empty. "Matilda?" She spun around. David was sitting up in bed, squinting at her. "I thought I saw something, outside." "What kind of something?" "A person, but they're gone now." David got up, came to the window, looked out. "I don't see anyone." "I know, I said they're gone." He put a hand on her shoulder. She resisted the urge to flinch. "You're stressed about the detective, about that missing woman. It's making you see things." "Maybe. Come back to bed." But Matilda stayed at the window, watching, waiting, because she knew what she'd seen, and she knew it hadn't been her imagination. The next morning, Matilda did something she'd never done before. She went through David's phone. She waited until he was in the shower, then picked it up from the nightstand. Her fingers knew his passcode, their anniversary, and the phone unlocked with a soft click. Messages, emails, nothing unusual. Then she found the deleted folder. Text messages, all to the same number, all deleted but recoverable. "I can't keep doing this. She's asking questions. We need to be more careful." The last message sent Thursday at 7:47 p.m. "It's done." Matilda's hands were shaking now. The shower stopped running. She deleted her search history, put the phone back, stood up just as David emerged from the bathroom, towel around his waist, water dripping from his hair. "Morning," he said, smiling. "Morning," she replied. And something in that moment crystallized, a terrible understanding that she couldn't unknow, couldn't unsee. She was married to someone capable of terrible things. Or was she? Matilda made breakfast like she did every morning. Scrambled eggs, toast, coffee. The routine was comforting in its banality. She could pretend for these few minutes that everything was normal. David read the news on his tablet. She read the back of the orange juice carton. They didn't speak. They'd stopped speaking, really speaking, months ago. Matilda couldn't pinpoint exactly when, but somewhere along the line, their conversations had become performances, scripted exchanges about the weather, about groceries, about whose turn it was to take out the trash. Never about what mattered. Never about the truth. "I have to work late tonight," David said, not looking up from his tablet. "Okay. Don't wait up." "I won't." He left at 7:30, like always, kissed her cheek, like always, said "love you," like always. She said it back, and hated herself a little more. When his car pulled out of the driveway, Matilda stood at the window and watched until the taillights disappeared. Then she counted to 100, slowly. Then she went to the garage. The garage was David's domain. He'd made that clear from the beginning. It was where he kept his tools, his workbench, his projects. She wasn't to disturb him when he was out here. He needed his space. She respected that boundary. Until now. The door was locked, of course, but Matilda had been planning for this moment. She'd found a lockpick set on Amazon, had watched YouTube videos on how to use it, had practiced on the bathroom door until she could do it in under 30 seconds. The garage lock took 45 seconds. She slipped inside and closed the door behind her. The space was immaculate. David was nothing if not organized. Tools hung on pegboards, each one outlined in marker so he'd know exactly where it belonged. The workbench was clear, except for a single lamp. The concrete floor was swept clean. Too clean. Matilda pulled on a pair of latex gloves, another Amazon purchase, and began her search. She started with the obvious places, the drawers of the workbench, the cabinets mounted on the walls. She found screwdrivers and wrenches and sandpaper and wood stain, normal things, innocent things. But in the bottom drawer of the workbench, hidden beneath a layer of shop rags, she found a box. It was small, metal, locked. Matilda's heart rate picked up. This was it. This was what he was hiding. She tried the lockpick set, but the mechanism was different, more complex. After 10 minutes, she gave up. She'd have to find another way. She photographed the box with her phone, noted its location, put everything back exactly as she'd found it. As she was leaving, she noticed something she'd missed before. A smell. Faint, chemical, underneath the normal smells of motor oil and sawdust. Bleach. And something else, something organic, something that made her stomach turn. Matilda left the garage quickly, locking the door behind her. She washed her hands 3 times, scrubbing until her skin was red. Then she sat at the kitchen table and tried to breathe normally, tried to convince herself she was wrong, tried to believe her husband wasn't a monster. Failed.
The paranoia started small. A sound outside at night, footsteps on gravel. David getting up at 2 a.m., claiming he couldn't sleep. The way he'd started locking the garage. The way Mrs. Parker had stopped appearing in her window. Matilda began making lists, times, dates, discrepancies in David's stories. She hid them in her jewelry box between the velvet layers where he'd never look. She started driving by the park where Jennifer Hartley was last seen, started checking the news obsessively, started wondering if she was going insane, because there was another possibility, one she didn't want to consider. What if she was the one who couldn't be trusted? What if her own memory was fragmenting? What if... No, she was certain, wasn't she? Matilda stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, dark circles under her eyes, skin pale. She looked haunted or guilty. She splashed cold water on her face, gripped the edges of the sink. The problem was Thursday night, that gap in her memory, those lost hours between 7 p.m. and midnight. She remembered pouring a glass of wine, then another, then nothing. Just fragments, impressions, a feeling of rage so intense it had felt like fire in her veins. And then David, standing over her, his face twisted with something that might have been fear or might have been disgust, saying, "What did you do?" But that couldn't be real. That had to be a dream, a nightmare brought on by stress and too much wine and the paranoia that had been building for months. Except it felt real as the scratch marks on David's arm, as real as the deleted messages on his phone, as real as the locked box in the garage. Matilda opened the medicine cabinet, stared at the rows of prescription bottles, Ambien for sleep, Xanax for anxiety, both prescribed by her doctor 3 months ago when she'd finally admitted she wasn't coping well with the move. She picked up the Xanax bottle, turned it over in her hand. She'd been taking these regularly, more regularly than prescribed. Could they cause memory loss? Could they make her capable of things she wouldn't normally do? She set the bottle down, closed the cabinet. In the mirror, her reflection looked back with eyes she didn't recognize. On Saturday, Matilda found the earring. It was under the passenger seat of David's car, a small silver hoop, not hers. She held it in her palm, feeling its weight. Circumstantial, maybe. Meaningless, possibly. Or evidence. She put it in her pocket. Then she searched the rest of the car, meticulously, every compartment, every crevice, under the floor mats, in the trunk. In the spare tire well, wrapped in a plastic bag, she found a phone. Not David's phone, a burner, the kind you buy at convenience stores with cash. Matilda's hands trembled as she powered it on. One number in the recent calls, called multiple times over the past 2 weeks. She dialed it. It rang 4 times. Then, "You've reached the voicemail of Jennifer Hartley. Please leave a message after the—" Matilda ended the call, stared at the phone. David had been calling Jennifer Hartley, the missing woman, the woman who was possibly dead, the woman who was last seen jogging past their house. On Thursday night. Matilda rewrapped the phone, placed it back exactly where she'd found it, replaced the spare tire, smoothed down the carpet. Then she went inside and vomited in the kitchen sink. When she was finished, she rinsed her mouth, washed the sink, wiped down the faucet, erased the evidence of her distress as thoroughly as David had tried to erase the evidence of what? An affair? A murder? Both? That evening, she made David's favorite dinner, pot roast, mashed potatoes, the meal he'd requested on their first anniversary. They ate in silence, the only sound the scrape of forks against plates. Finally, David looked up. "You've been quiet lately." "Have I?" "Distant." Matilda took a sip of wine. "I've just been thinking." "About what?" "About us. About why we really moved here." David's fork paused halfway to his mouth. "For the quiet. You know that." "Do I?" Something flickered across his face, too quick to identify. "Matilda." "That detective came by," she said, "about the missing woman." David set down his fork very carefully. "Did she?" "Yes. Jennifer Hartley. Do you know her?" "No." His voice was steady. "Should I?" Matilda shrugged, took another bite, let the silence expand. She was getting good at weaponizing silence. "Why would you ask me that?" David said finally. "No reason, just making conversation." But they both knew that was a lie. They finished dinner without speaking. Matilda cleared the plates. David retired to his study, another room she wasn't supposed to enter. She loaded the dishwasher, wiped down the counters, went through the motions of normalcy while her mind raced. She needed to get into that study, needed to see what he was hiding in there. But David was home, alert, watching her as carefully as she watched him. So she waited. At 10 p.m. he came out of the study. "I'm going to bed," he announced. "I'll be up in a bit, want to finish this book." He nodded, climbed the stairs. Matilda waited an hour, then another, until he heard his snoring, deep and rhythmic. Then she picked the lock on the study door. The study was smaller than the other rooms, darker. There were no windows, just walls lined with bookshelves and a desk in the center facing the door. Matilda closed the door behind her and locked it. She started with the desk drawers. The first 3 contained exactly what she'd expect: pens, paper, staplers, office supplies. The 4th drawer was locked. Of course it was. Matilda used her lockpick set. This lock was easier than the garage. She had it open in 20 seconds. Inside, files, thick manila folders. She pulled them out, spread them on the desk.
The first folder contained photographs of her. Matilda walking to her car, Matilda getting groceries, Matilda sitting in the park, page after page of surveillance photos, taken over months, some from before they'd moved to this house. Her hands shook as she flipped through them. The second folder contained medical records, psychiatric evaluations, diagnoses, prescriptions, all in her name. But she'd never been to a psychiatrist, never had an evaluation. She read the diagnosis: dissociative identity disorder with violent tendencies. Patient exhibits significant memory loss surrounding episodes of rage, presents danger to herself and others. The doctor's signature at the bottom was illegible. Matilda's vision blurred. This couldn't be real. These had to be fabricated. But why? The third folder was the worst. Inside were more photographs, but not of her, of bodies, women, different women, all with the same expression of terror frozen on their faces, and beneath each photo, a date. The dates went back 3 years. Matilda counted them. 12 photographs, 12 women, 12 murders. She was going to sick again. She shoved the folders back into the drawer, locked them. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely work the lockpick. She had to get out of this house, had to call Detective Reeves, had to... The door handle turned. Matilda froze. "Matilda?" David's voice, calm. "I know you're in there." She didn't breathe, didn't move. "The lock on this door clicks differently when it's picked. I hear it from the bedroom. I've been waiting for you to try this." Matilda looked around frantically. No windows, no other exits, just the one door, with David on the other side. "I'm going to open this door now, and we're going to talk, and you're going to understand that I've been trying to protect you." "Protect me? You've been spying on me. You have photos of dead women in your desk." "Those photos are evidence, Matilda, evidence of what you've done."
The world tilted again.
No, you're trying to confuse me. You're trying to make me think.
Thursday night, David interrupted. Do you remember Thursday night?
I was home with you.
You were home, but not with me. I was working late, remember? You were alone, and when I came home at 9:30, I found you in the garage, covered in blood, with Jennifer Hartley's body at your feet.
No.
You were crying, saying you didn't mean to do it, that she'd provoked you somehow, that she'd looked at you wrong at the coffee shop.
Stop.
I helped you, Matilda. I cleaned everything up. I disposed of the body. I've been protecting you for 3 years. 12 women. 12 times I've covered for you.
You're lying.
But even as she screamed it, doubts crept in. The gaps in her memory, the medication, the dreams that felt too real, the way she'd felt that terrible calm when Detective Reeves had come to the door, like she'd been expecting it, like part of her had wanted to be caught. "Open the door," David said quietly. "Please." Matilda's hand moved to the lock, then stopped, because she'd remembered something that didn't fit David's story. "If what you're saying is true, if I killed Jennifer Hartley Thursday night, why did you have her phone number programmed into a burner phone?" Silence. "Why were you calling her for 2 weeks before she disappeared?" More silence. "Answer me, David." Did you search my car?" "Answer the question." "Matilda, that's not... You're confused. You're having an episode." "An episode, like the ones described in those fake psychiatric records you created?" "They're not fake." "Then why is the doctor's signature illegible? Why is there no hospital letterhead? Why—" The door splintered. David had kicked it. Matilda grabbed the lamp, ripped the cord from the wall. The door splintered again. The wood around the lock was giving way. One more kick and he'd be through. Matilda looked around desperately. The bookshelves, maybe she could...
The door burst open. David stood in the doorway, breathing hard. His face was flushed, his eyes were wild, and in his hand was a knife. "I'm sorry. I didn't want it to be this way." Matilda swung the lamp. David ducked. The lamp sailed over his head, crashed into the doorframe. She ran. Or tried to. David grabbed her arm, yanked her back. She stumbled, fell hard on her knees. "I tried to make this easy," he said. He was standing over her now, knife raised. "I tried to make you believe it was your fault, that you were crazy, that you were the monster." "Why?" Matilda gasped. "Why do this?" "Because it's perfect, don't you see? I've been setting this up for years. The fake psychiatric records, the photographs documenting your episodes. When they find you dead, find the evidence I've planted, everyone will believe you killed those women, that you killed yourself out of guilt." "They'll know. Detective Reeves will know." David laughed. It was a horrible sound. "Detective Reeves is already halfway convinced you're involved. You lied to her, said you were home all evening, when I have receipts proving I was at the office until 9:30. She's suspicious of you, Matilda, not me." He was right. Matilda had lied, had made herself look guilty, exactly as David had planned. "The burner phone," I said. "I found it. That proves—" "You'll be dead, and that phone will disappear. There's no evidence linking me to Jennifer Hartley. No surveillance footage, no witnesses, nothing." "Mrs. Parker saw something. That's why she warned me." "Mrs. Parker sees what I want her to see. I've been feeding her information for months, telling her about your concerning behavior, your mood swings, your violent tendencies." Matilda's mind raced. There had to be a way out. Had to. "Wait. You made a mistake," she said. David paused. "What?" "If you're saying I killed Jennifer Hartley Thursday night, that you came home at 9:30 and found me in the garage—" "Yes." "But your text message, the one you sent at 7:47, it said, 'It's done.'" David's expression flickered. "If you didn't get home until 9:30, how did you know at 7:47 that it was done?" That message wasn't about—" "Yes, it was. You killed her, before you came home, and then you tried to frame me." David's face hardened. "Doesn't matter now. No one will ever see those messages. I've already wiped that phone." "Cloud backup," Matilda said. "Everything backs up to the cloud." It was a lie. She had no idea if he'd disabled cloud backup, but she saw the flicker of doubt in his eyes, the moment of hesitation. She kicked out, hard, caught him in the knee. He stumbled. The knife clattered to the floor. Matilda scrambled for it. Her fingers closed around the handle. David lunged at her. She thrust upward, felt resistance, then a terrible sliding sensation as the blade sank into flesh. David made a sound. Shock and pain combined. He staggered backward, hands pressed to his stomach. Blood seeped between his fingers. "Matilda," he gasped, "you—" But she wasn't listening. She was running, down the hallway, down the stairs, to the front door. Locked. Deadbolt, chain, locks she didn't remember installing. Behind her, heavy footsteps on the stairs. David was coming. Matilda ran to the kitchen, grabbed her purse from the counter, dumped it out with shaking hands. Keys. Where were they? The footsteps were getting closer. There, her keys. She grabbed them, ran for the back door. Also locked. She fumbled with the deadbolt. Her hands were slick with blood. David's blood. The lock clicked open. She yanked the door. Fresh air hit her face. She ran into the backyard, through the gate, into the alley behind the houses. Her car was in the driveway. She'd have to circle around to— Arms grabbed her from behind. Matilda screamed, struggled, but David was stronger, even wounded. He pulled her backward, against the fence, his breath hot on her neck. Should have locked that knife drawer after Jennifer. Should have known you'd fight back. Let me go. Can't. You've ruined everything. The perfect plan. 3 years of work. His grip tightened, one arm around her waist, the other hand reaching for her throat. Matilda threw her head back, connected with his nose, heard a crunch. His grip loosened. Matilda twisted free, spun around. David was on his knees, one hand on his stomach, the other on his face, blood streaming from his nose now, too. "You stabbed me," he said, almost wonderingly. "You actually stabbed me. You tried to kill me." "I had to. You figured it out. You weren't supposed to figure it out." Matilda backed away. "I'm calling the police." "They won't believe you." "Yes, they will, when I show them the study, the photos, the fake records." "Those will all be gone. By the time the police arrive, I'll have staged it perfectly. You attacked me, I defended myself. You were mentally ill, dangerous. It'll all make sense." "You'll bleed out before you can do any of that." David looked down at his stomach, at the blood spreading across his shirt. "Maybe, but I'll take you with me." He lunged. Matilda ran, through the alley, onto the street, her bare feet slapping against pavement. The streetlights were still broken. The darkness was absolute. She could hear David behind her, slower than before, but still coming. She reached the end of the block, turned the corner, and ran straight into someone. Strong hands grabbed her shoulders, steadied her. "Whoa, hey, are you okay?" A man, young, concerned. "Please," Matilda gasped, "help me. He's trying to kill me." "Who is?" "My husband. He's—" "Matilda!" David's voice, closer than she'd thought. The man looked past her, frowned. "Is that blood?" "Please," she begged, "call the police." But the man was already pulling out his phone. David emerged from the shadows, limping, bloody, looking like something from a nightmare. "Thank God," he said to the stranger. "You found her. She's not well, mentally. She attacked me. I've been trying to—" "He's lying!" Matilda screamed. "He killed 12 women. He's been framing me." The stranger looked between them, uncertain. "Sir," he said to David, "you need an ambulance." "Yes, please, and police. My wife is dangerous. She needs help." "No, no, you can't believe him. He—" "Ma'am," the stranger said gently, "you're covered in blood, and he's clearly wounded. I'm going to call for help, okay?" "Yes, thank you. She's having an episode. This has happened before." "Stop lying!" But even as Matilda screamed it, she knew how it looked. Her disheveled and bloody and hysterical. David calm and wounded and reasonable. The perfect victim. She'd played right into his hand.
The police arrived within minutes. 2 squad cars, 4 officers, lights flashing red and blue in the darkness. An ambulance came shortly after. They separated Matilda and David immediately. One officer led Matilda to a squad car, made her sit on the curb, took her statement while the EMTs worked on David. She told them everything about the study, the photographs, the fake psychiatric records, the burner phone. The officer wrote it all down. His expression was carefully neutral. "And you stabbed your husband?" he asked. "In self-defense. He had a knife. He was trying to kill me." "Where's that knife now?" Matilda paused. I don't know. I dropped it. In the study, I think." "And this study, it's in your house?" "Yes, it's locked, but I can—" "We'll need a warrant to search your home, ma'am." "A warrant? But my husband is a serial killer. The evidence is—" "We'll get a warrant," the officer said, "but these things take time." Time. David would use that time, would clean up the study, would destroy the evidence, would perfect his frame job. "Please," Matilda said, "you have to believe me." But she could see in the officer's eyes that he didn't. Across the street, the EMTs were loading David onto a stretcher.
Even from here, Matilda could see him talking to one of the other officers, explaining his version of events, the version where she was the monster. They took her to the hospital. Not the same hospital as David. They explained that was for everyone's safety. They took her to County General, where a doctor examined her, drew blood, checked her for injuries, found nothing but bruises on her arms from David's grip. "Do you use any medications, Miss Palmer?" the doctor asked. "Xanax, Ambien, but I don't—" "Do you currently be experiencing any hallucinations, hearing voices, feeling disconnected from reality?" "No, I'm completely lucid. My husband tried to kill me." The doctor made notes, ordered a psychiatric evaluation. Matilda wanted to scream. Instead, she sat quietly while they brought in the psychiatrist, answered her questions, tried to sound calm and rational, but every answer seemed to make things worse. Yes, she'd been experiencing anxiety. Yes, she'd been having memory gaps. Yes, she'd been suspicious of her husband for weeks, but hadn't told anyone. Yes, she'd broken into his study. Yes, she'd stabbed him. "In self-defense," Matilda kept saying. "He had a knife." But they hadn't found a knife. The police had searched the alley, the backyard, the study. No knife. David must have hidden it or destroyed it while she was being questioned. "I think we should keep you overnight for observation," the psychiatrist said gently, "just to make sure you're safe." "I am safe. I'm safe now that I'm away from him." "Even so, it's protocol when someone has experienced trauma." Trauma. Is that what they were calling attempted murder now? They moved her to the psychiatric ward, a room with no windows and a door that locked from the outside. Matilda sat on the edge of the bed and tried to think. There had to be evidence, something David hadn't thought of, something that would prove her story. The burner phone, if she could get to that before David did. But the police had impounded David's car. They'd find it eventually. Unless David had already told them about it, already spun some story about why he had a dead woman's number programmed into a burner phone. Maybe he'd claim Matilda had put it there to frame him. God, he'd thought of everything. Detective Reeves came to see her the next morning. She pulled up a chair beside Matilda's bed, studied her face. "How are you feeling?" the detective asked. "Like my life is over." "Want to tell me what happened last night?" Matilda told her everything, from the beginning, the scratch marks, the missing woman, the garage, the study, the fight. Detective Reeves listened without interrupting. When Matilda finished, the detective was quiet for a long moment. "That's quite a story," she said finally. "It's the truth. The problem is, we searched your house this morning with your husband's permission. We found no photographs, no fake psychiatric records, no evidence of any of what you described. He destroyed it. He had all night to—" "We also spoke to your neighbor, Mrs. Parker. She confirmed that your husband has expressed concern about your mental state for several months, that you've been exhibiting erratic behavior. He manipulated her. He's been setting this up for years." "We found the knife." Matilda's heart leapt. "You did? See? I told you." "It was in your nightstand drawer, with your fingerprints on it. Only your fingerprints." The room spun. "That's impossible. He grabbed me. His prints should be—" "He was wearing gloves when we found him, leather gloves. He said he put them on because his hands were cold before you attacked him." Convenient. So fucking convenient. "The burner phone," Matilda asked desperately. "Did you find it in his car?" "No burner phone. We searched thoroughly." "Then he got rid of it, or hid it somewhere, or—" "Miss Palmer," Detective Reeves' voice was gentle, "your husband is claiming you've been mentally unstable for some time, that you've been accusing him of terrible things, that last night you had a complete break from reality and attacked him." "And you believe him?" "I'm trying to get to the truth. The truth is, he's a serial killer who's been framing me. Then help me prove it. Give me something concrete, something I can verify. Matilda thought frantically. The text messages, on his phone, the deleted ones, they're still recoverable if you— We checked his phone, Miss Palmer. There are no deleted messages to or from Jennifer Hartley's number. Then he wiped them more thoroughly, but there are ways to recover data even after— We also checked your phone, Miss Palmer. Matilda froze. You had Jennifer Hartley's number programmed in your contacts under a false name, Target. What? No, I didn't. We found searches in your browser history for ways to dispose of a body, for how long it takes to die from strangulation, for parks with low foot traffic. He planted those. He must have accessed my phone, and your phone never left your possession. According to the logs, those searches were made while you were home alone. Matilda's mind raced. I don't remember making those searches. I wouldn't. Maybe the medication, the Xanax, can cause memory loss. Maybe I— She stopped, heard what she was saying, heard herself providing excuses for something she didn't remember doing, just like David had said she would. Detective Reeves leaned forward. Miss Palmer, I want to help you, but you need to be honest with me. Have you been having blackouts? Gaps in your memory? Yes, but have you been feeling increased anxiety, paranoia? Have you been having violent thoughts? Only about my husband after I realized what he— Have you considered that you might need help, professional help? Matilda looked at the detective's face, saw the pity there, and knew she'd lost. David had won. He'd manipulated evidence, manipulated witnesses, manipulated her into looking exactly like the mentally ill woman he'd claimed she was. I didn't kill anyone. I didn't attack my husband except in self-defense, and I'm not crazy. I believe you believe that, Detective Reeves said, which was worse than not being believed at all. They kept Matilda under psychiatric observation for 72 hours. During that time, she had a lot of visitors. A court-appointed lawyer who looked tired and overworked and didn't believe her story. A psychiatrist who asked probing questions about her childhood and whether she'd ever experienced fugue states. Mrs. Parker, who came by to express concern and tell Matilda she hoped she got the help she needed. Even the Mitchells, the neighbors Matilda had never spoken to, who brought flowers and awkward condolences. Everyone acting like she was already convicted. David didn't visit, but he sent flowers with a card that read, "Get well soon. I forgive you. Love always." Matilda threw them in the trash. On the third day, they released her, with conditions. Weekly psychiatric appointments, mandatory medication, a restraining order that prevented her from going within 500 feet of David. Not that she wanted to, but it meant she couldn't go home. Their home was David's home now. She stayed in a motel on the highway, cheap, anonymous, the kind of place where no one asked questions. And she thought about what to do next. She could run, leave the state, start over somewhere new with a new name, but that would make her look guilty, and David would win completely. Or she could stay, fight, try to prove her innocence. But with what evidence? David had destroyed everything, had turned every potential witness against her. Or she could play the game David had started, could turn his own tactics against him.
The next morning, Matilda went to a library, used a public computer to do research. First, she looked up David's history, his past, before they'd met. She found something interesting. In college, David had dated a girl named Rebecca Chen. The relationship had ended badly. Rebecca had filed a police report claiming David had stalked her, harassed her, threatened her. But the report had never gone anywhere. No charges filed.
The complaint dismissed as a case of he said, she said. Rebecca had transferred to a different school. 3 months later, she'd disappeared. Her body was never found. Matilda made notes, printed articles, built a timeline. Then she started looking into the 12 women David had photographed. She couldn't find all of them. The photos hadn't included names, and she'd only seen them briefly. But she remembered 3 faces clearly. She searched missing persons databases, ran reverse image searches, sent queries to true crime forums. After 2 days of digging, she'd identified 5 of the 12 women. All missing, all unsolved cases, all last seen in cities where David had lived or visited for work. It wasn't proof, not yet, but it was a pattern. Matilda kept digging. She found something else, something that made her hands shake. One of the missing women had been pregnant when she disappeared. The news reports mentioned that she'd confided in a friend about having an affair with a married man, a man she refused to name. The woman had disappeared 2 weeks before she'd planned to confront him, to tell him about the baby. Matilda checked the dates, cross-referenced them with David's work calendar, which she still had access to through their shared online storage. He'd been in that city the week she disappeared. He'd been at a conference, one he'd told Matilda he couldn't miss. She had hotel receipts. She had dates. She had motive. If she could prove David had been having an affair, if she could prove he'd had a reason to kill that woman, it wasn't much, but it was something. Matilda started making calls to the missing woman's friends, to her family, to anyone who might have information. Most didn't want to talk, didn't want to relive the trauma. But one did. The friend the woman had confided in, a woman named Beth who still lived in Chicago and still wondered what had happened to her best friend. "I never saw him," Beth told Matilda over the phone. "Sarah wouldn't tell me his name, said she was protecting his family. But she showed me one photo, just one. It was blurry, taken from a distance, but I remember thinking he looked familiar." "Do you still have that photo?" "No, the police took it when Sarah disappeared. It was too blurry to be useful," they said. "Can you describe him?" Beth hesitated. "Tall, dark hair. That's really all I could make out. But Sarah said he had a scar on his left hand, between his thumb and index finger." Matilda's heart rate quickened. David had a scar on his left hand, between his thumb and index finger. He'd told her it was from a childhood accident, a broken glass. She'd never questioned it. "Beth," Matilda said carefully, "would you be willing to testify to this if it came to that?" "Testify about what? A blurry photo and a scar? That's not evidence of anything." "It might be, combined with other information." Beth was quiet for a long moment. "Are you saying you know who killed Sarah?" "I think so, but I need to prove it." "If you do," Beth said, her voice hard now, "I'll testify. I'll do whatever it takes." Matilda spent the next week building her case. She found 2 more women who'd been connected to David. One had been his secretary, the other a woman she'd met at a bar during a business trip. Both had filed harassment complaints with their employers. Both complaints had been quietly settled, money exchanged for silence. Both women had disappeared within 6 months of the settlements. Matilda documented everything, created a detailed timeline, connected dots that the police had never connected because they had never looked at all the cases together, because they were in different cities, different jurisdictions, different years. But the pattern was clear. David had been killing for at least a decade, long before he'd met Matilda. She'd just been his cover story, the mentally unstable wife who could take the fall for his crimes if he were ever caught. He'd probably started planning it the moment he'd met her. The realization was like ice in her veins. Their entire relationship had been a lie. She'd never known him at all. When Matilda had enough evidence, she went back to Detective Reeves. She'd called ahead, made an appointment, brought everything organized in folders. Detective Reeves looked skeptical when Matilda walked in, but she agreed to listen. Matilda presented her case, methodically, calmly. She showed the timeline, the missing women, the connections to David, the pattern of harassment, the settlements, the disappearances. Rebecca Chen, Sarah Williams, all the others. She showed the dates that matched David's travel schedule. She showed the evidence of his lies, the restraining orders filed and dropped, the complaints buried. When she finished, Detective Reeves was quiet for a long time. "This is extensive," she said finally. "It's the truth. But it's all circumstantial. We can't prove your husband killed any of these women. We don't even have bodies for most of them. Then look for them, get warrants, search the places he lived, the places he traveled. Based on what? A theory constructed by a woman who's currently under court-ordered psychiatric care?" Matilda's jaw tightened. "I'm not crazy. I didn't say you were, but that's how a defense attorney will paint you. That's how a jury will see you. So you're saying even if I'm right, it doesn't matter? I'm saying we need concrete evidence, physical evidence, something that can't be explained away." "Like what?" Detective Reeves leaned back in her chair. "A confession."
Matilda thought about it all the way back to the motel. A confession. How was she supposed to get David to confess? He was too smart, too careful. He'd never admit to anything. Unless he thought he'd already won. Unless he thought Matilda was no longer a threat. An idea began to form. Dark, dangerous, but possible. She'd have to take a huge risk. She'd have to put herself in danger. But it might be the only way. Matilda spent the rest of the day planning. Then she made a call to David's cell phone. He answered on the third ring. "Matilda." His voice was cautious, surprised. "I want to see you," she said. "The restraining order—" "I don't care about the restraining order. I want to talk, just the two of us." "I don't think that's a good idea." "Please, David, I need closure. I need to understand what happened, why things fell apart." He was silent, weighing her words, looking for the trap. "Where?" he asked finally. "The house, our house, tonight, 10 p.m. Matilda, please, one last conversation. Then I'll sign whatever you want. Divorce papers, whatever. I just need this." Another pause, longer this time. "All right," he said, 10 p.m. Matilda ended the call. Then she called Detective Reeves. "I need your help," she said, "one more time." Matilda arrived at the house at 9:45, used her old key. She'd made a copy before David had changed the locks. The house was dark, silent. She went to the living room, sat on the couch, waited. Hidden under her shirt was a wire. Detective Reeves had been reluctant to authorize it, had said it was too dangerous, but Matilda had insisted. This was her chance, her only chance. At exactly 10 p.m., she heard a car in the driveway. The front door opened. David stepped inside. He looked different, thinner, tired. The stab wound had healed, but he moved carefully, as if still in pain. "Matilda," he said, "you shouldn't be here." "I know, but I needed to see you." He closed the door, locked it, came into the living room but didn't sit.
"What do you want?" he asked. "The truth. I want you to tell me the truth." "About what?" "About everything. About Jennifer Hartley, about the other women, about why you tried to frame me." David's expression didn't change. "I already told you the truth. You attacked me. You've been mentally unstable for—" "Stop," Matilda interrupted. "Just stop. There's no one else here, no one to perform for. It's just us." "That's what worries me." "I'm not going to hurt you, David. I just want to understand. Was any of it real? Did you ever love me?" Something flickered across his face. Regret, maybe, or calculation. "No," he said finally. "I needed a wife, someone stable, someone I could control, someone who could be my alibi, someone I could control." Matilda felt the words like a physical blow, but she kept her expression neutral. "And the psychiatric records, the photographs? Insurance, in case you ever figured it out, in case I needed to discredit you." "How long were you planning this?" "From the beginning, from the day we met." He smiled. It was a terrible smile. "You were perfect, Matilda. Isolated. No close friends. No family. History of anxiety. You were so easy to manipulate." "Keep him talking. Keep him confessing." "What about the other women? How many were there?" "Does it matter?" "It matters to me." David shrugged. 15. No, 16. I lose track sometimes." 16 murders. 16 lives. Why, David? Why did you do it?" "Because I could. Because I'm smarter than everyone else. Because watching the life drain from their eyes made me feel—" He paused, searching for the word. "Alive." There it was, the confession, clear and unambiguous. Matilda hoped the wire was getting all of this. "And you'd have gotten away with it," she said, "if I hadn't figured it out." "I did get away with it. You're the one who's facing charges, remember? You're the one who'll go to prison. Maybe, or maybe you made a mistake." "I don't make mistakes." "Then what's this?" Matilda opened her jacket, showed him the wire. David's face went white, then red, then very still. "You're recording this," he said flatly. "The police are listening. They're right outside." "You bitch." His voice was cold, deadly. "You manipulative little bitch." "I learned from the best." David moved fast, faster than she expected. He grabbed her, yanked the wire from her chest, threw it across the room. Then his hands were around her throat. "You will kill me," he hissed. "I'll kill you and tell them you attacked me again, that you were trying to frame me with a fake confession, that I acted in self-defense." Matilda couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. She clawed at his hands, but his grip was too strong. The room was starting to go dark, fuzzy around the edges. Then the front door burst open. Detective Reeves, 2 uniformed officers, guns drawn. "Police, let her go."
David released her, stepped back, raised his hands. Matilda collapsed on the floor, gasping. Her throat felt crushed. "She attacked me," David said calmly. "I was defending—" "We heard everything," Detective Reeves interrupted. "The wire wasn't the only recording device. There were cameras in this room, 3 of them, getting every angle." David's face drained of color. "That's illegal. You can't—" "Ms. Palmer invited us in, gave us permission to install the cameras. It's her house, too, remember? You haven't finalized the divorce." David looked at Matilda, at the detective, at the officers surrounding him, and for the first time she saw fear in his eyes. Real fear. "David Palmer," Detective Reeves said, "you're under arrest for the murders of Jennifer Hartley, Rebecca Chen, Sarah Williams, and 13 other women.
You have the right to remain silent." As they cuffed him, David looked at Matilda one last time. "You won't get away with this," he said. "My lawyers will tear you apart. They'll say you coerced the confession, that you manipulated me, that you're the real monster." Matilda stood up, straightened her jacket, met his eyes. "Let them try," she said quietly. "I have 16 bodies worth of evidence. I have timelines. I have witnesses. I have everything I need to put you away forever. They'll never find the bodies. Then you'll tell them where the bodies are, eventually, because now that we know what you are, we'll never stop looking." David was silent, defeated. They led him out of the house in handcuffs. Matilda watched from the doorway, watched the police car drive away, watched her husband, her monster, disappear into the darkness he'd created. Detective Reeves came to stand beside her. "You did good," the detective said. "That was brave and incredibly stupid." "Probably. He could have killed you before we got inside." "I know. Why did you take that risk?" Matilda was quiet for a moment. "Because no one else was going to. Because I was the only one who could." Detective Reeves nodded. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Sorry I didn't believe you at first. You believe me now. That's what matters." The detective handed her a card, different from the first one. "This is my personal number, if you need anything, anything at all." "Thank you." "What will you do now?" Matilda looked back at the house, the place that had been her prison, her nightmare. "Move, far away from here." 3 months later, Matilda sat in a coffee shop in Portland. She'd left everything behind, the house, the furniture, the memories, started over with a new job, a small apartment, a life that was quiet and anonymous and safe. David was in prison awaiting trial. His lawyers were working on his defense, but the evidence was overwhelming. 16 women, 16 murders, all connected to him through forensics, through testimony, through the confession he'd given on tape. He'd tried to recant, claimed Matilda coerced him, that he was afraid of his life, but the jury wasn't buying it. The trial was set to begin in 2 weeks. Matilda wasn't sure if she'd attend. Part of her wanted closure, wanted to watch David get sentenced. But another part just wanted to forget, to move on, to rebuild herself from the wreckage he'd created. She was seeing a therapist now, a good one, working through the trauma, the trust issues, the paranoia that still woke her up at night, convinced someone was standing in her room. It was getting better, slowly. She'd even started dating again. Nothing serious, just coffee with a guy from her yoga class, a guy who seemed kind and normal and nothing like David. But she was careful, so careful, because she'd learned the hard way. Monsters don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they look like the person sleeping beside you. Sometimes they look like the man you love. And sometimes you don't realize you've been living with one until it's almost too late. But there was something Matilda hadn't told anyone, something she kept locked away, secret. A memory from that Thursday night, the night Jennifer Hartley disappeared. She remembered pouring wine, drinking, feeling that rage building. She remembered going for a walk to clear her head. She remembered seeing Jennifer jogging past, beautiful, blonde, smiling. The woman from the coffee shop, the woman who'd touched David's arm, and she remembered feeling that rage explode. Remembered her hands reaching out, remembered Jennifer's eyes, wide, terrified, remembered the snap. And then nothing, just David standing over her saying, "What did you do?" But that couldn't be real. That had to be a false memory, planted by David, part of his manipulation. Except sometimes, late at night, when she closed her eyes, she could still feel it. The texture of Jennifer's skin under her fingers, the way the body had gone limp, the rush of power, of control. Matilda told herself it was trauma, post-traumatic stress creating false memories. Her therapist agreed, said it was common in cases of psychological abuse, said David had done such a thorough job of gaslighting her that she'd internalized his lies, that she believed on some level that she'd killed Jennifer Hartley. But she hadn't. She hadn't. David was the monster. David was the killer. She was the victim, the survivor. She repeated this to herself every day. Most days she believed it. On the day the trial started, Matilda did attend. She sat in the back of the courtroom, anonymous in the crowd, watched David enter in his prison jumpsuit, watched him sit at the defense table, watched him scan the room until his eyes found hers. He smiled. It was a small smile, almost imperceptible, but Matilda saw it and felt ice in her veins, because in that smile was knowledge, was certainty. He knew what she'd done on Thursday night, knew that he hadn't killed Jennifer Hartley, knew that for once, just once, his frame job had been real. Matilda was the killer, and David was taking the fall for her crime. He could expose her, could tell the truth, could bring down her whole carefully constructed story. But he wouldn't, because this was his final act of control, his final manipulation, letting her live with the guilt, letting her wonder every day if she was the monster after all, letting her become what he'd always claimed she was. The trial proceeded, witnesses testified, evidence was presented. David was convicted on 16 counts of murder, sentenced to life without parole. And as they led him away, David looked at Matilda one last time, smiled, and mouthed 2 words, "Thank you." That night, Matilda stood at the window of her Portland apartment, looked out at the city lights, the normal people going about their normal lives, people who'd never killed anyone, never felt that rush of power, never wondered if they were capable of unspeakable things. She poured herself a glass of wine, raised it in a silent toast. To David, the monster who made her. To Jennifer Hartley, the woman who died by her hands. To all the other women, the ones David actually killed. And to herself, the survivor, the victim, the killer. She drank. And across town, in a house on Maple Drive, Mrs. Parker's curtains finally opened. But the house behind them was empty, and no one on that street would ever ask why, because some secrets are too dangerous to speak out loud, some truths are too terrible to face, and some monsters learn to hide in plain sight, wearing a victim's face, telling a survivor's story, living a normal life, while remembering every night the sound Jennifer Hartley made when she died, and knowing with absolute certainty that if provoked, if threatened, if someone looked at her the wrong way, she could do it again.